Part 100. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 994. The news that His Excellency Jia Yan returned to Earth spread throughout the entire Earth almost instantly. Many media began to spread the news, and people spontaneously took to the streets one by one to celebrate this day, which was almost like a festival. The treatment that was previously given to the so-called giant mosquito clan has now been completely transferred to Jia Yan. Of course, although neither the official nor the Jia family publicizes Jia Yan's identity, within a few years, it has long been unanimously recognized by the people. Even almost everyone on the earth secretly knows that he is a member of the Jia family member. However, neither the Earth officials nor the Jia family have responded positively to this identity. Jia Yan's return can almost be said to be full of confidence as far as the Earth is concerned. Just now, the Earth's Ministry of Foreign Affairs officially issued a stern statement, expressing its rare anger over the Asta Empire and Rulan Empire's recall of technical personnel and teaching staff. We Earthlings have finally risen again. Just now, the External Defense Department of the Earth Alliance fleet used warlike words, telling the great empire that if the other side continues to persecute us, then we will not hesitate to fight. The words spoken one after another are not like the words that the Earth would say recently, and almost everyone on the Earth knows about this change, and that is because of the return of Jia Yan. The most reliable and powerful protector of the people on Earth has returned after disappearing for a period of time. With his protection, how can the people on Earth show weakness? However, the main target of the demonstrations on Earth, that is, the emissary of the great empire who was temporarily staying in the capital of China on Earth, only smiled slightly after hearing a series of news released by people on Earth. This is a male creature that is almost identical to a human being. It's just that he is much more handsome than ordinary Earthlings. Haha. I asked why the people on Earth had an affair with me before. It turned out that they were waiting for the so-called protector. It's a pity. I originally thought that there would be any powerful people in this small Earth. But now I finally see it, just one. The mailman looked speechlessly in a certain direction, then shook his head as if mockingly. It turned out that this strong man was looking in the direction of Jia Yan's clone. You must know that this place is more than 2,000 kilometers away from the Jia family's return city, and Jia Yan cannot detect him. On the contrary, this envoy can actually detect Jia Yan's existence. Just as the envoy looked slightly into the distance, Jia Yan, who was returning to the city, also faintly noticed and groaned slightly. Then he narrowed his eyes and looked back at the brainwave power that was looking at him. But there was no gain at all. Humph, your strength has reached such a level, no wonder you are so arrogant. After Jia Yan looked at the distant place, he stopped caring and just lowered his head. His clone's strength has dropped a lot now, and he hasn't been able to control it for a while. Jia Yan needs to get familiar with such a weak body, otherwise he won't be able to show his strength when he encounters a battle. Originally, he didn't think that some great empire that suddenly appeared could compete with his clone, but this brainwave power made him understand that he had underestimated the other party. In the starry sky, the true body is still flying on the road leading to Li Qiao's power. The journey is not too far and can be reached in a few days. During this period of time, Jia Yan plans to roughly resolve matters on the Earth. Finally, it's time for the second day on Earth. Jia Yan arrived outside Jia's house early. Although almost the entire Earth knew about his return yesterday, except for the Jia family, only a few top officials from the Earth had actually seen him. Outside the gate of Jia's house, a small flying car was parked there. A few hundred meters away, there were media people and government officials. Jia Yan stepped out of the gate of Jia's house, and saw the media people far away over there. All of them had excited faces, and they did not dare to make any noise. They just lowered their heads and saluted Jia Yan, and then quietly raised their hands. With the shooting equipment inside, I took a few photos of Jia Yan from the side. Jia Yan did not deny face, but before entering the car door, he raised his hand and waved to the media staff. This move almost made the entire media and government officials burst into tears with excitement. After getting on the speed car, Jia Yan looked back in the direction of Jia's house. It turned out that his eyes were on a very familiar building. There, a heaven-level high-level brainwave power was emanating slightly, seemingly looking at Jia Yan's direction intentionally or unintentionally. There was another person with mid-level heaven-level strength, one with almost a hint of hatred, who was also sizing up the speeding car where Jia Yan was, but he was not so cautious, and did not hide his hatred at all. Well. Jia Yan let out a long sigh. Jia Yan had a headache for the mother and son. They had noticed him when he returned yesterday, but they did not come out to meet him as Jia Yan expected. Especially Jia Rong, who took what he said to Jia Yan before seriously, and the way he practices now is vaguely similar to the crazy appearance of Jia Yan before. Otherwise, it would not be possible to reach the mid-level heaven level in just a few years, or even be vaguely close to the mid-level peak. But he didn't know that no matter whether his current cultivation speed was much faster than before, compared with Jia Yan's real body, it was still far behind. Jia Yan sighed helplessly. Even now, he still didn't know how to face that mother and son. It feels wrong to say that they are not his family, but it is even more wrong to say that they are also family members. Jia Yan does not remember having each other or having any memories of being a family member. Forget it, I won't stay on Earth for long anyway. I've solved the problem temporarily this time, so I'll have a chat with their mother and son. Jia Yan shook his head. The speeding car took off and headed towards the capital under the lens of a group of media. The former capital of China is no longer just the capital of a country, but has become the capital of the Earth. The entire Earth, as well as the humans in the outer planetary cities, regard this place as the administrative holy land of the entire Earth. And here, it is no longer the simple appearance it was a few decades ago. Even Jia Yan did not dare to imagine that people on Earth could build some extremely tall buildings. The huge buildings are almost more than 1,000 meters high. Inhabited are those from the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire who came to work on Earth, and some even reached heaven-level strength. It is conceivable that in its heyday, there would have been many aliens on this capital planet, and the unique style of the Asta Empire people must have attracted many Earthlings. Jia Yan used network equipment to surf the internet in the flying car, and even saw news on the internet about the union between Earthlings and Asta people. But now this situation is no longer the case. In those huge buildings, it is difficult to see aliens, and most of them are depressed. Even the departure of these alien creatures has affected the development of the Earth. The economy has been hit hard recently, and several major stock markets have fallen to their limit. The people of Earth have finally reached the age where they are about to take off. This big empire is too much. Jia Yan was extremely happy to see the Earth develop into what it is today. You must know that it has only been a few years. Even with the support of the resources of the two superstar empires, he was a little surprised that the Earth could achieve such progress. But the great empire intervened, and as a result, the Earth became stagnant, and even the economy seemed to have stopped. It is foreseeable that if this situation continues for a period of time, even within a year, the Earth, which has no deep foundation, may regress. After all, in a few years, the Earth will not be able to absorb the technology and knowledge brought by the two empires. It takes at least one generation of efforts to transform that knowledge into one's own. Jia Yan would not let such a situation happen. When he arrived at the capital city, Jia Yan suddenly felt that somewhere in the capital city, a brainwave force that although he had never seen before, brought strong pressure to his clone, directly suppressed him. On the body. Do you want to use suppression? Jia Yan felt it coming, so he went to Shiyu when the opponent's strength is actually a venerable, and it is still much stronger than the clone that has lost its strength now. But will he be afraid? Puff. A slight brainwave power emitted directly. He rushed in the opposite direction to the creature that was suppressing him. Even though they were still a few kilometers apart, the overt and covert fighting between the two sides had already begun. In the distant diplomatic residence, the handsome messenger who originally had a disdainful expression suddenly flashed in his eyes. A transparent cover appeared directly on the surface of his body, which was a defensive cover converted from brainwave power. Bang! A crisp sound sounded like an explosion in the diplomatic residence. The envoy took 3 steps backwards with a look of shock on his face. How could it be? Isn't he weaker than me? Finally, this messenger no longer dared to underestimate the guardian of the earth flying from afar. However, he must have used all his strength in this blow and caught me off guard. He just wanted to have some background and say for the meeting later. After a strange look flashed in the eyes of the envoy, he thought that this was the guardian of the earth who was using all his strength to give him a blow. And will Jia Yan in the distance use all his strength? The clone is still too weak. I used brainwave power to directly bombard him. Even if I use advanced power methods, I still can't defeat him easily. In the distant speed car, Jia Yan shook his head calmly. In fact, he did use a lot of brainwave power, but it was not at full strength. So in this meeting, what kind of sparks will there be between his clone and the so-called messenger? Even Jia Yan himself didn't know the outcome. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 995. Lord Jia Yan, see you again. Read the latest chapter. Outside an imposing building, several officials were waiting. Jia Yan took steps and flew out of the car. In fact, the speed of the speeding car is much slower than his own flying, not to mention that this clone also has the ability to travel through space. If you use the space shuttle ability, you can reach the capital city in one step. Everyone is polite. You have done well in the past few years. Jia Yan looked at this group of officials. Sure enough, they were all high-ranking officials. What he remembered were the heads of several major countries. However, in front of Jia Yan, they are just ordinary people. Even the ranking of anti-aging is below their own parents. Some of them have aged too much in the past 2 years, and now they all look like they are in their 70s. If they don't use OS thanks to imperial medicine, he might die in a few years. Thank you for your compliment, sir. Several figures who were extremely noble in the eyes of ordinary people on earth were like children in front of Jia Yan. They almost trembled with excitement when they heard his praise. Reminiscing about old times, we'll talk about it later. The messenger, just be inside. I'll go over and meet him. Jia Yan stopped the words of a group of big shots and then walked straight forward. He doesn't really need anyone else to guide him, but of course he has to show off now. The guards around looked at Jia Yan from a distance, as if they were seeing an idol. Although some were guarding, their facial expressions could not change. It can be seen that after seeing Jia Yan, they still grinned and almost cried. Speak up. Well, the strength of these guards is also good, some of them even reach the heaven level, which is very good. Jia Yan sensed the overall defensive strength of these guards from a distance and was a little surprised. The brainwave power talent of the people on Earth is indeed good. You must know that even the little Kikai has just reached the middle stage, but there are so many ordinary people on Earth who have reached the heaven level. Little Kikai was taught by Jia Yan step by step. However, he also understands that those here are definitely the best among the best on the entire Earth, and there are still relatively few heaven-level ones on the entire Earth. But it might take several generations of Earthlings before someone reaches the status of a venerable person. Even little Kikai now, I think, will find it difficult to achieve a venerable status. This is due to differences in the environment and genes. Alas! Jia Yan thought about the future situation of strong people on Earth. Even if he thought optimistically, he believed that it would be difficult for a venerable person to appear in this generation of Earth people. As for the half-star level, it would take thousands of years. Even for the more powerful star level, Jia Yan can only express it with one voice, haha. I thought a lot, but not much time passed. But the distance was not far. After thinking about this, he followed the elevator to the highest floor of the diplomatic building, which was also above the 135th floor. The elevator opens, and the outside world is a flat space. In this space, there is another door, which is the meeting place. Lord Jia Yan, the great imperial envoy, is waiting for you inside. A big shot who accompanied Jia Yan here greeted Jia Yan respectfully, and then set off to leave. There was no one else on the entire floor. After all, they believe that it is unnecessary to arrange any guards or other officials between the two powerful men, because these two existences are beyond the imagination of current earthlings. Of course, Jia Yan had already felt that the existence that he had been fighting with before was in this building. He walked slowly towards the door in an unhurried manner, and then gently pushed it open. Behind this gate is a vast space, about tens of thousands of square meters in size. There is a row of conference tables inside. At the front of the conference table was a person who looked like a very young man. Jia Yan looked at the other person's human-like appearance with some surprise. If he hadn't known that the other person was not from Earth, he would have thought that the other person was an Earth person. Just looking carefully, you can still see that the other person's bone structure and face are slightly different from those on Earth. Your Excellency Jia Yan, welcome to your arrival. The other person stood up and his height was similar to that of an Earthling, about 1.5 meters tall. Hello, Your Excellency Ambassador. Jia Yan nodded, then came to the table opposite the other party and sat down directly. Seeing Jia Yan's demeanor, the ambassador felt slightly sullen. You must know that the two parties said they had just met, but in the eyes of the strong, they had already started fighting openly and secretly when they were hundreds of kilometers apart. For a venerable level being, there is not much difference between a few hundred kilometers and a direct meeting. He originally thought that Jia Yan, the so-called protector of the earth, should have understood the strength gap between the two sides, but he did not expect that when Jia Yan came in front of him, he would still look so casual. Could it be that he was pretending on purpose, hoping to gain more say and benefits in subsequent negotiations? No, this guy seems to have been around the stars a lot. He doesn't understand that in the starry sky, strength is the most important thing. If he dares to behave like this now, he is definitely relying on something. The other party's eyes were like knives, cutting hard at Jia Yan. Okay, Your Excellency, the so-called ambassador of the great empire, there is no one else here. Let's open the skylight and speak frankly. Your strength is not a big threat to me. If you want to use your strength to oppress me, you may not be able to. I got my wish. Jia Yan looked at the other party's thoughtful expression, chuckled, and spoke directly to the other party. My strength is not a threat to Your Excellency Jia Yan? Could it be that you think that your lord's strength can make you an enemy of me? The messenger paused for a moment, then asked playfully. He sighed a little. This Jia Yan either rarely saw a venerable being of the same level, or he was too confident in his own strength. No matter which one it was, he had reason to think that Jia Yan was just a country bumpkin. Thinking about it, if the opponent's strength reaches the level of a venerable, it is normal for him to not see any venerables if he hangs out in this starry sky. Even if he has been to a more prosperous place farther away, with the current venerable's strength, he might not be able to see any venerables. Zhong Hung, so he will think that he is the same venerable person, and he, as the envoy, can't do anything to him. Haha, Your Excellency Jia Yan, you may not understand that there are also differences in strength between sages. Some even have huge differences in strength. The envoy had a headache and explained to Jia Yan. You must know that if my great empire hadn't wanted to waste any of the power of this Orion arm, otherwise I would have wiped out your noble race by myself. Even you, I dare say you can easily solve it. Oh, Really, hearing that the other party actually taught him, Jia Yan's eyes flashed with ridicule. Then tell me, how big is the strength gap between the sages? Huh, that's why I said, you country folk. Listening to Jia Yan's words, the imperial envoy thought that Jia Yan was still trying to impress him with his words, so he directly said the words countryman to his face. He didn't say that country bumpkins were enough to give him face. There are differences in talent among the venerables. People with your strength may not dare to imagine that the most powerful venerable in our empire can even kill 5 or 6 venerables like you and me by one person. Do you understand? That kind of adult is a powerful venerable. The other party explained to Jia Yan helplessly. Are you such a venerable person as me? Hearing the other party involve him, Jia Yan shook his head speechlessly. Okay, let's just treat it as that. Then, please tell me, Ambassador, do you want the Earth to be a what, and why did you directly wipe out the victory that I had previously won on Earth? Hearing Jia Yan's seemingly subdued words, the envoy finally smiled. Jia Yan, I have never said this to the people on Earth before, because they are not qualified, but you are different and have enough strength to understand the inside story. Our great empire is the most powerful empire in the center of the Orion Arm. Even the royal family is the descendant of the powerful guardian beast thousands of years ago. Oh, about the guardian beast, maybe you don't know what it is. I will give you some Orion Arm knowledge later. For some reasons, the guardian beasts repelled some powerful invaders from the outside world thousands of years ago. Now, these powerful invaders are coming again. In order to resist them, our empire needs to move the entire Orion Arm. Join us together. Your starry sky has been disconnected from our empire for a long time. We only came here recently, and found that those outsiders have already invaded once. Yes, Jia Yan, you may have felt that the so-called biochemical empire that you defeated before is one of those invaders. On this point, our empire is extremely sure. I want to praise you here, and this is also the real reason why our empire does not attack your Earth civilization. But now is not the time for us to be happy. The war is about to begin. Our current strength is not enough, far from enough. The enemies you defeated before are far from their true strength. The real them will be even more terrifying. So we need united. Your Earth is an emerging interstellar civilization. We have previously assessed that it is not cost-effective for your Earth to require those personnel from the Asta Empire and Rulan Empire civilizations. Only when they return to their homeland can they exert their maximum productivity. We can build more war materials for our great empire and the overall civilization of the Orion Arm. Now you understand why we want the talents of the two empires to return to the country. Of course, your Earth still has some role, especially your Excellency. Our empire has now united more than 200 lords, and even 3 a more mysterious master of our empire will be in charge. If you on Earth can join this big family, it will definitely be of great benefit to your own strength and the status of Earth's race. Lord Jia Yan, I hereby solemnly invite you to join our great empire camp. How about it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 996. What else could Jia Yan say when faced with a person who sometimes called him sir and sometimes called him a country bumpkin? After hearing the other party's invitation, Jia Yan smiled and said nothing. Then he made a summary of the other party's words in his heart. Then he discovered something that surprised him. I see. I have always thought that the Orion Arm is not that small. It's just that I didn't have the opportunity to investigate further afield before. Now indeed, this so-called great empire has appeared. His words also seemed to reveal that in addition to the great empire, are there other empires? Jia Yan analyzed the other party's words and then came to some conclusions. Of course, Jia Yan was not too surprised that there were other interstellar civilizations within Orion's arms. It was just that there were so many venerables in other places. Level, he was just a little surprised. But the difference in strength between the venerables here and the venerables in the genius battlefield would probably make the venerables here cry. Needless to say, high-level talents and top-level talents, only mid-level talents, or even ordinary talents can easily kill dozens of experts with similar strength to this envoy. Speaking of Jia Yan as a country bumpkin, in Jia Yan's opinion, this envoy is an out-and-out country bumpkin. But through what he said, I was able to draw some conclusions. Jia Yan thought about the meaning of the other party's words, and then thought of something. That was when he was on the genius battlefield. Thousands of years ago, on the Orion arm side, a senior evolutionary beast had fought against the invaders from the outside world. Counting the time, maybe this the guardian beast the messenger mentioned was the senior evolved beast back then. Unexpectedly, there are actually some connections between these two distant places. Jia Yan couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Okay, Your Excellency Jia Yan, you can tell me what your conclusion is now. After Jia Yan pondered for a long time, the envoy became impatient. It turns out that in his opinion, Jia Yan's strength is not very strong for him. To put it bluntly, this kind of strength is considered relatively weak among the venerables in the current alliance of the Great Empire. It is simply ridiculous to pretend to be so strong. So Jia Yan has been so hesitant, and he is impatient. Well, since he is that senior's Houyi, then fine. Jia Yan came back from his thoughts and nodded. Just when the messenger looked slightly happy and wanted to speak about his mission to the Earth, Jia Yan continued. However, the personnel that your empire recalled from the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire must be sent back to me. Then your empire will send technical personnel to provide technical support to my Earth. This is the condition for me to join you. When he suddenly heard Jia Yan's condition, the messenger froze for a moment, and then a burst of anger almost burst out. Is this called agreeing to join? It is simply unreasonable that the weakest venerable person in the area would make such a request. Not only do they need to take back the talents of the Asta Empire and Rulan Empire that the empire recalled before, but now they also need their great empire to send technical personnel. Master Jia Yan, don't think wrongly. If my great empire hadn't seen your civilization as my colleague in the Orion arm, low-level civilizations like the Earth would not have paid any attention to it. Now you actually want my great empire, sending talents here? Are you thinking too much? He actually doesn't care about the technical personnel. After all, there are still many civilizations in the entire Orion arm, and there are countless technical personnel. But if he casually agrees to the conditions of this small civilization, where does the big empire put the face of it? Whether I think too much or not is not your concern, Lord Messenger. In short, here are my conditions. You can also go back and seek the opinions of the higher UPS in your empire. If you don't agree to my conditions, I will not let the Earth civilization join. From the Imperial Alliance. Humph. You are so shameless, I tell you, Jia Yan. Our great empire doesn't care about your small Earth civilization at all. If you continue to speak arrogantly, we will put my great empire on the same level as your small Earth civilization. Level, be careful, I'll give you a good look now. The handsome envoy was finally angry at this time. After all, in his opinion, the Earth is just a small interstellar civilization with roughly only the main star. Even without the aid of the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire for several years, it would now be basically an aboriginal civilization. Just civilization. The strongest person in this small civilization dared to speak like this to his imperial envoy. No matter whether it was public or private, he was furious now and his evil intentions were revealed. Look good to me. Jia Yan also laughed. The other party has always shown disdain for the Earth civilization and him, and he has always endured it. Now that the other party has spoken to such an extent, Then if Jia Yan doesn't show some expression, wouldn't it be in vain to become such a powerful person? The winner? Boom. A terrifying and huge pressure seemed to be transmitted to this clone from the distant starry sky through the endless distance of the universe. Although Jia Yan's real body is far away, his connection with this clone is created through quantum entanglement using the powerful technology of the Northern Star region. In addition, he is now more familiar with space, so he can use a little space talent and the principle of quantum entanglement to bring a little coercion to this place. Speaking of which, there might be some similarities between the principle and the great being he had encountered before. Shockingly, when this terrifying pressure came. What? The messenger originally wanted to be angry, but he never expected that the other party would dare to get angry before him. But before he could fight back with a smile in anger, he suddenly realized that the terrifying coercion erupting from the other party's body was far greater than think about him. Cluck cluck. He staggered back several steps. In his eyes, Jia Yan suddenly transformed from the weakest venerable person he was originally to a being who seemed far superior to him. He could even faintly feel the existence of an ancient giant beast from this terrifying pressure, looking at him coldly with a touch of cold eyes from an endlessly distant place. Puff. The envoy just felt it once and then spurted out a mouthful of hot blood. He staggered and sat down on the ground, his eyes seemed to have lost focus and he was almost absent-minded. You, what on earth are you? He tried to get up from the floor, but failed several times. Okay, go back to your mansion and tell the so-called high-level officials of the great empire what I said, and then we will talk about the following things. I hope your empire can understand what kind of people can be offended. What kind of person can't be offended? Jia Yan glanced at the other person lightly. This time, the terrifying aura behind him had disappeared, but it still made the other person tremble all over. Then the envoy no longer dared to look arrogant, lowered his head, and did not dare to look at Jia Yan. After reluctantly getting up from the ground, he bowed respectfully to Jia Yan. After that, as if he was running for his life, he did not take the stairs, but flew out of the window on the highest floor of the diplomatic building, and fled towards the temporary consulate residence of the great empire in the capital. Not long after, Jia Yan also left the top floor with a calm expression. After taking the elevator and arriving on the first floor, there were already dozens of current high-level officials of the Earth Alliance, that is, heads of state from major countries, waiting outside the elevator. Master Jia Yan, I don't know how your discussion went. Yes, sir, we just saw that the great empire's envoy seemed to be leaving through the window. Didn't you guys talk about it? As far as we know, this great empire is very powerful. Several UN were a little worried. They all speak Chinese, and now Chinese is the official language of the entire Earth civilization. Even the Mandarin used externally is Chinese, so Jia Yan can understand the meaning of their words without translation. You don't have to worry. Jia Yan looked at the sky outside. It seemed that there was someone staggering there who had just flown to the diplomatic residence of the great empire. Just wait, the talents from the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire will be back soon. Moreover, the big empires will also send some technical talents over. Their technology is better than the two big empires. Bihai. Several figures were stunned. It turned out that they thought that even if Jia Yan came forward, it would be a good thing if the other party could no longer have any unequal treaties with the Earth. However, they did not expect that Jia Yan actually got a better negotiation result. Of course, this group of characters are all like human beings, and they immediately thought that Jia Yan's strength might be far greater than they imagined. Even the unfathomable envoy of the great empire, alone they were all afraid of the existence that could pacify the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire. That's good. Lord Jia Yan is lucky. That's right. When you return, you will soon have to work hard for our Earth civilization. We are extremely scared. As if by coincidence, The several heads no longer asked what happened, but began to flatter him. Jia Yan shook his head, chatted a few words with this group of big shots, then walked out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building, got on the speed train, and headed directly towards the city of return. Lord Jia Yan, you are indeed a blessing to me, the people on earth. Yes, the luckiest thing about our planet is that we have the blessing of Lord Jia Yan. By the way, there was help from the giant Mosquito clan before. We Earthlings will never forget this helpful race. It will be Earth Liberation Day in a while, and it will be a grand celebration of the festival. Bitbrain is completely relieved. After all, with Jia Yan's words, if they are still uneasy, they are questioning Jia Yan's authority. This kind of strength exists in the sky. Even if they are the most authoritative people on the earth, they will not have the slightest disrespect for Jia Yan. Not to mention that Jia Yan has saved the entire civilization, but just his strength, it is not just a matter of earth. The higher echelons of civilization can question it. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 997. Not long after, Jia Yan returned to where the Jia family was. Looking down from the speed car, the entire return city has a vague air of a big city. It is hard to believe that the city was just born in more than 10 years. This is a city built to commemorate the return of the giant mosquito. Just because of the later appearance of Jia Yan, the giant mosquitoes disappeared, and the city's status became somewhat embarrassing. Fortunately, the Jia family returned to the city here, and even Jia Yan himself appeared in the city frequently without any complaints about the city, so the people who returned to the city felt a little at ease. Return. Jia Yan looked thoughtfully at the city below where the number of speeding cars gradually increased and the number of ordinary vehicles was rare. Arriving at the gate of Jia's house, the speeding car stopped. Jia Yan walked down from the speed car door. In the distance, he could see media people not far away. They had been waiting there for a long time. They were respectful to Jia Yan and kept taking pictures. Jia Yan nodded to them and walked into the Jia family's door. Of course, he has no need to contact the media, and it is not his job to do this kind of thing. Those media people do not even have access to Jia Yan's power at all. Brother, you're back. How was your conversation with the Imperial Envoy? Somewhat unexpectedly, when Jia Yan entered the Jia family compound, he saw his sister and his youngest daughter Ruruo waiting for him at the door. You really care about this matter? Don't worry, after the matter is done, I also taught the messenger a lesson. I think he won't be so disrespectful when he sees you in the future. Jia Yan shook his head with a smile. It seems that Jia Lin still holds a grudge. Humph, I knew that good results would come of it if you step forward, brother. Look at him. When I saw him the day before yesterday, he even vaguely said that it would be easy to destroy us people on Earth. He looked down on you. You are not the same as today. Lesson. When Jia Lin heard Jia Yan's words, she suddenly beamed with joy. Looking at her appearance, one can imagine how she was insulted by the so-called messenger before. Uncle, sister said yesterday that she had learned cultivation from you, Ruruo also wants to do it. While the brother and sister were chatting, Xiao Ruruo, who was sucking her fingers, suddenly interrupted. Brother, if you don't tell me, I would have forgotten about Ruruo. Ruruo has also made progress in her brainwave power recently. Now she is at the Earth level. You can teach her. Jia Lin heard her youngest daughter's words and quickly seized the opportunity to plead with Jia Yan. Okay, you can come to my house with her later. Jia Yan nodded. In this Jia family's mansion, there are several houses, but there is a house that was built in recent years. Although no one usually lives in it, cleaning and other things are done very well, and the owner there is its Jia Yan. In order to facilitate his return at any time, the house is cleaned and maintained to an absolutely world-class level. After Jia Yan said goodbye to his sister, he wanted to take steps towards his own house, but was stopped. Well. After looking at a seemingly remote building a few hundred meters away in a small forest, Jia Yan turned and walked there. That area is the residence of Jia Yan's self-laid bride and self-laid son. Jia Yan has always had a headache for the two of them and doesn't know how to deal with it, but the matter is there and it won't go away on its own if he doesn't solve it. What's more, after seeing too much about life and death, as well as various events in the universe, Jia Yan has become much more receptive to similar things. It was impossible for him to figure it out directly at this time, but at least he was willing to contact the other party. When they arrived at the house, the door had already been opened, and a little boy who looked to be 8 or 9 years old walked out. This child is not very tall, and his appearance is vaguely similar to Jia Yan's. He is the little boy who makes Jia Yangzi his father, and is also Jia Yan's nominal son, Jia Rong. What are you here to do? He walked out of the room and asked Jia Yan with a bad face. Already 8 or 9 years old, Jia Rong has understood a lot of things. Now that he meets Jia Yan, he no longer hates him so much, because he knows about his birth and what happened between his mother and his father through his mother's mouth. But he still couldn't accept Jia Yan's attitude. Xiao Rong, let me see you and your mother. Jia Yan looked at him and said directly. After hearing this, for some reason, Jia Rong's mouth flattened and tears rolled in his eyes. He is clearly in the middle of grade school, but he still behaves like an ordinary child. Seeing this, Jia Yan sighed again. This child has probably endured too much and has become a bit withdrawn. Jia Yan, led by Jia Rong, walked into the house. Fortunately, the furnishings in the house did not appear to be very cluttered, and it seemed that the mother and son were doing well. Husband, you have come to see us. A dignified and generous woman was sitting on the sofa in the living room. When she saw Jia Yan, she said hello without much change in her demeanor. She was still the same as he had seen before, not an ordinary earthling. But through her face, Jia Yan could see that the other party seemed a little happy. You can call me assassin, or you can call me Jia Yan. Jia Yan did not acknowledge the other husband's words, but corrected him. Okay, Satsuma nodded. Your cultivation speed is also very fast. Now you are at a high level of heaven. You will soon be able to reach the top. Jia Yan was a little surprised when he saw the opponent's strength. You must know that the commander of the biochemical empire he met back then, who was the biological father of this woman, was at most a person who had just reached the half-star level of the Orion arm. But this daughter has actually reached the advanced stage of heaven level in the past few years, which is considered very fast. My cultivation speed is not comparable to yours. The other party ignored Jia Yan's compliment, but rolled his eyes. If he hadn't known that the other person was not from Earth at all, Jia Yan might have fallen in love with her because of her inadvertent flirtation. It's a pity that the opponent's body is a white monster after all, and Jia Yan himself is nothing more than a mosquito monster. Let's not talk about your and my cultivation speed. Let's talk about Jia Rong. You have to take good care of his problems. He hasn't gone to school yet. I suggest you let him go to school and experience what an ordinary child should have. Life. Jia Yan shook his head and gave his own suggestion. No, the efficiency of this Earth's learning unit is too low. Rong has already finished their university courses. If it were not a waste of time, I would have asked him to learn more advanced Asta subjects. Now what he wants is for cultivation. Going to school will slow down his cultivation speed. The other party seemed to be a rational person and gave a list of reasons why Jia Rong should not be allowed to go to school. No, I'm not talking about study and cultivation, but his childhood. Jia Yan continued to shake his head. He actually understood the other party's thoughts. Originally, the other party was not an Earth creature. Even if he watches Earth entertainment programs every day, this does not mean that she will be able to accept some of the ideas of the Earth. Rong is still young. If he is not allowed to experience the life of an ordinary child, he will definitely regret it in the future. Jia Yan stared into the other person's eyes. As Jia Yan stared at her, a faint blush appeared on the face of the beautiful woman from Satsuma. Okay. Then I'll let him go to school. She turned her head away and nodded in agreement without looking at Jia Yan. Jia Yan clearly felt that when Satsuma Kono agreed, Jiarong's expression on his side changed slightly, and he seemed to be a little happy. What's more obvious is that the child's attitude towards Jia Yan has also changed. Later in the conversation, talking to him was no longer full of resistance. Okay, I'm going back and I'll see you again when I have time. Time passed slowly. Jia Yan looked at the setting sun, then stood up, said goodbye and walked towards the door. Dad. Just after Jia Yan took a few steps, a somewhat difficult cry suddenly came from behind. He turned around strangely and saw the little boy behind him, whose face was already flushed. This was the first time he took the initiative to call Jia Yan daddy today. You, please walk slowly, Jiarong said unnaturally, then buried his little head into the sofa cushion and refused to come out. Okay, Xiaorong, goodbye. Jia Yan didn't know why, but he felt a little happier. He obviously didn't have much recognition for the wife and son he sent. After walking out of the house where Satsuma and Jiarong were, Jia Yan raised his head and looked at the bright moon slowly rising in the sky. The moon is different from what it was a few decades ago. Even on the earth, you can see the dark crescent part on it, and some lights are dotted, shining with the light of the city. In fact, Jia Yan has some emotions. Every time he returns to the earth, he always has some unique feelings, and this time is the same. What exactly are relatives? Jia Yan shook his head and asked. Then he smiled helplessly. The originally simple relationship between family members was a little messed up here. In Jia's family, his parents, sister, etc., have no blood relationship with him in the strict sense. On the contrary, Jiarong, who he does not admit, is actually blood relationship with him. In this way, his closest relatives here are, it should be Jiarong. But in fact, the relationship between the two parties is not very good, and Jia Yan does not recognize the father-son relationship in his heart. Now his heart felt as if a cruet had been knocked over, with all kinds of mixed feelings. Hey, what is this? Jia Yan shook his head helplessly and walked back to his house. In fact, he came here today to ask about the details of the biochemical empire in Satsuma, but he was affected by the atmosphere and did not ask. Fortunately, I have enough time. I can't ask today. I will ask tomorrow. Jia Yan didn't know why, but he gradually no longer resisted meeting this mother and son. And Jia Yan entered his house, and in the house where the Satsuma niche was located, two eyes kept watching him leave, and only turned back after a long time. Even his actions this time made everyone in the Jia family a little surprised, especially those servants who liked gossip, who were talking privately. However, this discussion is only among the Jia family. Within the entire human race on Earth, the issue regarding Jia Yan does not focus on this small change in the Jia family at all. I would like to thank the 3 book friends who contributed. I can't see their names, so I can't thank them one by one. I'm sorry. Mobile phone users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 998. The people on Earth were indeed shocked again by Jia Yan, but not by the small changes in his relationship with his relatives at home. Rather, it was a discussion about the changes after the meeting between Jia Yan and the envoys of the Great Empire. The former envoys of the Great Empire were arrogant on Earth, just like a superior country treating a subordinate country. But the Earth Alliance, which knew the opponent's strength, did not dare to resist, and even allowed the opponent to take away the technological creatures that the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire had assisted in building Earth civilization. This is almost a humiliation for the people on Earth, but they don't dare to say anything. After all, They have big fists. Even in the previous network, a small number of people questioned whether Jia Yan did not dare to deal with this big empire, otherwise, he would not show up at all. However, just when things were about to reach their worst point, Jia Yan really appeared. And as soon as he appeared, he downplayed it, causing the messenger of the great empire to return in defeat. Although no one on the earth except the messenger and Jia Yan himself knew what the specific process was, this did not prevent the people of the earth from making up their own minds. And it has to be said that there are also some wise men on earth who have extremely strong analytical skills. They almost analyze things without much difference. Master Jia Yan must have taught the envoy a lesson, otherwise he would be so depressed. Now that we have programmed him on the internet, he doesn't dare to say anything. That's right. When he first appeared, we scolded him on the internet. The next day, intelligence personnel from the Earth came to investigate us, which made us afraid to talk nonsense. Now he is definitely suppressed by Lord Jia Yan. We don't have anyone to care about his affairs. Haha, long live Mr. Jia Yan. What a big empire, but I am so frightened by Mr. Jia Yan that I don't even dare to speak. Most netizens on Earth still admire Jia Yan very much. Of course, there are a group of brainless gangsters everywhere. This group of people hate Jia Yan, and he is a secret promoter of the great empire, and he is actually here to harm the people of Earth. Fortunately, there were not many people in this group, and they were the ones who were attacked by everyone on the internet, so it did not cause any harm to public opinion. Jia Yan did not pay too much attention to the noise on the Earth's internet. After all, to him, the Earth now is really a small place. Even if it is the same planet as the Earth, his true form can easily destroy the people living on it. Biology. All he has to do is to control the future of Earth civilization, and not to acquire another small civilization that will be wiped out in the embryonic stage, because no matter what, the Earth is his home planet. Then Jia Yan, you went too far. You think that if you can defeat me, you can defeat my entire civilization? It's so rebellious that even my great empire dares to look down on you. Just as the public opinion on the internet was fermenting and the entire Earth was celebrating, in the capital city of China, the envoy from the great empire stood in front of a strange aircraft and kept roaring in frustration. You must know that as an envoy of the great empire, he has a high status no matter where he goes. If he doesn't give him face, he will succumb to the iron cry of the great empire's external envoy. But this Jia Yan actually dares not to give him face. He is so a single failure might make you a laughing stock for the rest of your life in front of several ambassadors. But his strength is definitely weird. My brainwave power is clearly greater than his. Looking at him, he looks like an ordinary venerable who has just been promoted. How can he have such terrifying strength? After the envoy roared, he calmed down. After all, while he was a strong man, he was also a diplomatic envoy selected by the great empire. He could not be a fool who could only roar. After thinking for a long time without an answer, the envoy opened the strange aircraft in front of him. Humph, I will send a signal to several envoys around me now. They will use the great empire's unique gravitational wave travel method and they will be able to arrive soon. This Jia Yan is strong, but can he be stronger than several envoys working together? Not long after, a special communication method was shot into the starry sky by the messenger. Everything in the Orion arm seems to be a little different from the civilization of the outside world, at least compared to the places Jia Yan has been to. Not only is there a gap between the level of the strong and the outside world, but even the direction of civilization is also somewhat different. What's even more special is that the most powerful empire in the Orion arm moves long distances not through space jumps, but through gravitational waves. Even cosmic signals are related to gravitational waves. This method of communication is actually not fast. After 3 full days, the messenger's communication reached the ears of several nearby messengers dozens of light years away. This is because the ambassadors of the great empire have already arranged relay equipment in this star field. Otherwise, they would not be able to contact each other so quickly. Huh? Then there are strong people on Earth who resist my great empire? And they are existences that guy can't fight against. Haha, interesting. Earth, isn't it the case that there have been several major civilizations before? Although the overall technological level is not high, and there are not even a few strong people, there is a civilization with a top strong person? It is a strong person who resists. Could it be that the top strong person appears? It's funny. Even if a mere venerable person can deal with an envoy, if he takes action against a few of our envoys, he is seeking death. Forget it, just go and laugh at that guy once. As soon as the communication spread, several ambassadors quickly responded. They are all in the Asta Empire, the Rulan Empire, and several other nearby empires. At this time, the communication was received and he set off directly to Earth. Huh, they are all laughing at me. Let's see if they can still laugh when we see Jia Yan. The envoy from the Earth Empire received the reply with a smile on his face. No matter what, as long as they come here, no matter how powerful Jia Yan is, he is destined to be unable to defeat a few of us, unless he has the terrifying strength of the top sages of our empire. But how could that be? The messenger felt at ease, and could calmly look at the words that had recently been spoken against him on Earth. Anyway, as long as a few ambassadors arrive and kill Jia Yan, he can unite with a few ambassadors to wipe out the entire civilization of this small Earth in the name of humiliating the great empire. Swear, you continue to scold. The more you scold, the faster I will kill you. Looking at the posts on the Earth network that criticized him, the messenger, and even the great empire, the messenger looked cruel. Jia Yan was in the Jia family compound, waiting for the messenger's reply. As a being who has been in the universe for a long time, Jia Yan certainly would not be naive enough to think that this matter would be revealed so easily. Even Jia Yan guessed the truth. The other party would not simply send his words back to the empire headquarters, but would join forces with several of his surrounding accomplices to fight Jia Yan again. If he made such a mindless choice, it's not my fault. In his own house, Jia Yan thought lightly. Uncle chirp, Uncle chirp. Just when Jia Yan was thinking about things, a soft little girl's voice came to Jia Yan's ears from the outside world. Jia Yan smiled slightly, of course he understood who was coming from the outside world. When I walked to the door and opened the door, I saw a small figure standing outside, and I couldn't even pull the door lock. She is Jiaruo, Jia Yan's little niece. Uncle Ju, Ruruo comes to fight with Uncle Ju. Ruruo's very domineering first words were this. Uncle Ju won't teach you how to fight. Jia Yan touched his nose helplessly. In fact, he thought this sentence was not wrong. Wasn't he just fighting? It's just that his fight is not simple, it goes into the universe. Mom, here are the snacks she made last night. Uncle Ju likes them. Xiao Ruruo didn't know if she had inherited her sister's name. Recently, it was hard for Xiao Kakai to stop calling Jia Yan uncle, but this little niece started to do it again. After placing the snacks, Jia Yan was about to give instructions to Jiaruo, but there was another knock on the door. After Jia Yan's expression changed, he used the power of brain waves to open the door. Auntie, call me over. There was a little boy standing at the door, looking at Jia Yan with a timid expression. He is Jiarong, Jia Yan's nominal son. Come in. Jia Yan nodded with a wry smile. He understood that this was his sister's superfluous attempt to repair the relationship between Jia Yan and Satsumaken's mother and son. Jiarong entered with some caution. Jia Yan found that he was wearing his school uniform. It seemed that his previous words had an effect, and Satsuma Kong promised Jiarong to go to school. Not long later, on the lawn in front of Jia Yan's house. Uncle, is the power of brain waves like this? Xiaoruruo didn't understand Jia Yan's teachings very well. She just used her brainwave power to throw up and put down a pebble in succession. Very good, Ruruo is very good. Jia Yan patted her little head as a sign of praise. Xiao Jiarong on the side looked disdainful. He was about the same age as Xiaoruruo, but his strength was unknown to him. Of course, Jiarong also knew that his birth was not simple. It was unfair to compare with Jiaruo, so he had nothing. Come on, it's your turn now, Jiarong. Didn't you still surpass me a few years ago? Now let me see how far your strength has progressed. Jia Yan turned around and looked at Jiarong. Jiarong's expression changed, and there was clearly a trace of Jia Yan's unyielding expression from back then. Boom! Jiarong rushed directly to the sky. As a mid-level heaven-level person, his strength is certainly not simple. It is extremely normal to fly into the sky. When he reached the sky, he moved his arm and used the power of his brain waves to pull out a tree with a diameter of 2 meters below the ground. Ha ha ha! This tree keeps flying in the sky without any effort or unskilled appearance. This shows that the master of brainwave power is not that simple in mastering the power. Very good. It seems that you are already very familiar with the power of brainwaves. Jia Yan nodded with satisfaction. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 999. Genius remembers love male sign go divided by Xiao. Talk rightward arrow net in 1 second to provide you with wonderful novels to read. Uncle, Ruruo can fly like brother wrong anytime. Just when Jia Yan was praising Jiarong, Jiaruo, who was standing next to him and playing with stones using the power of his brain waves, was dissatisfied and pointed at Jiarong, who was flying happily in the sky, and asked, Ruruo, don't worry, you can fly when you grow up. Jia Yan responded to her helplessly. Then when will I be better than brother wrong? Xiaoruruo seemed a little proud because she got Jia Yan's guarantee. Jia Yan didn't know how to answer. It is absolutely impossible to say that she can surpass Jiarong. Even if Jiarong cannot surpass herself, her bloodline is extremely terrifying after all, and it is basically impossible for people on Earth to compare with him. But let's put it bluntly, Xiaoruruo will definitely be hit. Sister Ruruo, my mother said, you can't surpass me from high in the sky. Jiarong's voice came with a cold snort. Jiarong also saw Jia Yan's good attitude towards Jiaruo before. Now he was a little annoyed. After all, he was a child, so he directly mocked him. Oh, I don't. Brother wrong is bad. Jiaruo's nose twitched, and then she pointed her finger, and the pebbles controlled by her brainwave power flew up like bullets and shot towards Jiarong, who was dozens of meters above the ground. You want to hit me? Jiarong was also a little angry. The look on his little face was condensed, and then the brainwave power came back down. Suddenly, with the strength of the mid-level heaven level, the pebbles were completely pushed away, and a trace of the power fluctuation will even affect Jiaruo. If this blow hits, Jiaruo will not be seriously injured, but he will definitely suffer minor injuries. Release. Jia Yan, who had been watching this scene, finally spoke. Then in mid-air, Jiarong's brainwave power bombarded him and disappeared instantly. Jiarong, who was in the air, also felt that he was controlled by an irresistible force, grabbing him smoothly to the ground. Jiarong was shocked by this surprise. You must know that he has been playing pranks recently. Even his mother, Satsuma Kono, who is more powerful than him, can only barely teach him a lesson without hurting him. But now Jia Yan has a force to catch him and make him. There is no possibility of resistance at all. Upward arrow, downward arrow, www.ai. Now, Jiarong, who thought he had made a lot of progress in the past few years, understood the strength gap between him and Jia Yan. Sister Ruruo is still so young, how can you play with others seriously? You are still angry. You don't look like your brother anymore. Apologize to your sister. Jia Yan looked at Jiarong and said angrily. One look at the child's behavior showed that he usually lacked discipline. After all, although Satsuma is the mother, she is also an alien creature. He still remembers that Satsuma's father did not discipline her very much on the gray-yellow star, so now it is normal to teach your son to let things go. Jia Yan can't let him continue like this, because even if Jiarong's strength is still low now, in a few years, he might be at the top of the heaven level. Even if there is Satsuma temple at that time, he can control him, but if he does it accidentally, if he is promoted to the rank of venerable, no one on earth can control him. He will still have such a temper. Maybe when Jia Yan returns to the earth after traveling outside, he may find that the earth has been destroyed by this kid. Jia Yan doesn't want to make this mistake because he thinks small things make big things happen. I don't. Mom said that the weak must respect the strong. If Ruruo hits me, I will teach her a lesson. This kid has a lot of truths, and he heard them from his mother. Don't believe your mother, apologize to me now. Jia Yan was a little confused. Just now she thought Satsuma Temple would restrain this kid, but when she heard it, it turned out that her own character was a big problem. I don't, Jiarong shook his head vigorously. But no matter how hard he struggled, a faint force around him restrained him, unable to move at all. It seems that we need to educate this child well recently. Jia Yan smiled helplessly. He didn't have many options on how to educate such a child. Fortunately, Jiarong was still a little afraid of Jia Yan, especially when Jia Yan became angry and threw him 10,000 meters into the atmosphere. After breathing heavily, he finally cried and agreed to apologize. Although Jia Yan apologized, no matter how he looked at him, Jiarong's eyes looked a little unwilling. Even though Jia Yan is powerful, he still has trouble educating his children. At the same time, I also admire educators. The imperial envoy seemed to have disappeared for the time being. When Jia Yan was educating Jiarong in the Jia family compound, there was no movement. The tall building of the great empire that stands in the center of the capital of China has been silent for nearly half a month. The intelligence officers who have been secretly guarding here have also been slightly relieved for the past few days. On this day, Jia Yan also checked the information that the messenger had transferred to his Jianyiji brain that day. I see, this is the origin of the great empire. After Jia Yan read the huge amount of information and roughly learned the language of the great empire, he finally nodded with understanding. The origin of the great empire is simple to say. Just as Jia Yan had predicted before, it turned out that the great empire fought with the senior evolved beast that Jia Yan guessed thousands of years ago, and then that the senior drove away the invading enemies, but he himself also passed away bravely. The great empire was just a small empire back then. In order to snatch the power that the strong man left, he called himself the evolutionary beast Senior Houyi, and brought him to the throne. It was described as a divine beast, and then it took advantage of the situation to develop. Today, thousands of years later, it has reached the level of power that dominates the world. Of course, it is impossible to say such words in this information, and it is impossible to guess the past practices of the great empire. Then it's impossible for them to be sure whether the invading enemy they mentioned is the enemy from back then. Otherwise, even that senior will die in battle, so how can they dare to stay and resist? So what exactly is the biochemical empire? Jia Yan has always wondered whether the biochemical empire was a force surrounding the Orion arm. But Jia Yan's true form in the Genius battlefield collected the distribution star map of the forces around the Orion arm in the Genius battlefield, but he did not see any force similar to the biochemical empire at all. Even the small forces were not similar to the biochemical empire. I've also asked Satsuma Monument, and she doesn't know much about the biochemical empire, because her birthplace is the Grey Star, and no one has told her about the inside story of the biochemical empire. Jia Yan felt a little headache, not against the big empire, but against the biochemical empire that he had fought before. In his opinion, this force is a bit too weird, not only because of the strength they show, but also because they are not similar to the star field, even the Genius battlefield and the Northern Star field. Not only are the forms of fighting different, but the form of a strong person is also different, and he even has the ability to generate a strong person. This is what makes Jia Yan most uneasy. Just when Jia Yan was doubting about the biochemical empire, his expression was slightly shocked. It's not something that comes from the clone's side, but from the real body's side. Oh. It turns out we are in the Lakiao force. Jia Yan just felt a hint of warning from his real body. Fortunately, after he calmed down a little, he didn't notice any surprises. Relax your avatar's spirit and transfer it to your true body. Compared with the strength of the clone, the real body is still more comfortable. Returning to the spiritual power in the true body, the comfort of a meal. To know the true strength of Jia Yan, although he is also a venerable, this venerable is not just an ordinary venerable, but a super genius whose current fighting ability far exceeds that of his clone by an unknown number of times. Returning to this place after taking possession of the body, he and his avatar are of course on a par with each other, which is extremely comfortable. The Lakiao force is very close to the Tianhe force, but I can't go back. In addition to the Beituan, I have also provoked more forces. If I am not careful, I will draw the war to the Tianhe force that is benevolent to me. I can't repay kindness with enmity. Jia Yan made a plan, and then the concept ship operated by his real body spread out and flew towards the Lakiao forces that had entered the hinterland. The purpose of entering the Lakiao force was to repair the concept ship. Compared with the crisis on the Earth, it was not a very urgent matter. Jia Yan flew all the way and just needed to pay attention and go to the star in the Lakiao force to ask where. Just have a strong technology workshop. So even if the real body needs a little energy, after figuring out the rules of action, Jia Yan still puts most of his energy back to the clone. Uncle, I can lift 2 stones together. Haha. In the clone, a little girl hugged Jia Yan's thigh and giggled. Is there any work nearby? Jia Yan was interrupted by her, lowered his head and smiled. He wanted to say some words of encouragement, but when he opened his mouth, he asked the question that he was actually talking to someone else. Ahem, Xiaoruruo, you did a good job. Control the flying of the 2 rocks. Don't underestimate this. It will be very helpful for your growth in the future. Jia Yan quickly changed his words and encouraged Ruruo. Ruruo is very powerful, right? Jiaruo looked at Jia Yan expectantly. Yes, Ruruo is very powerful. Jia Yan nodded. But on the other side, a boy's dissatisfied snort was heard. It turned out that Jiarong was having fun again. Jia Yan shook his head helplessly. Education is too difficult. Huh? Are you finally here? Just when he wanted to say something to Jiarong, but his expression suddenly changed. Then Jia Yan looked at the blue sky, with a slight joy in his expression. You must know that he was a little tired from switching between the 2 bodies. It would be a good idea for these so-called messengers to come over and resolve the matter as soon as possible and end this tired feeling as soon as possible. Uncle Ju, what's wrong with you? Ruruo hugged Jia Yan's thigh and pouted coquettishly, as if she was angry that Jia Yan ignored her. Uncle is going to do something. You guys should practice first. There might be fireworks to watch later. Don't be afraid if you can. Jia Yan touched Jiaruo's little head, and then nodded to Jiarong. He believed that with this kid's mind, even though he could not sense the power in the sky, he should be able to guess what happened. After that, he stepped forward and disappeared directly into the sky, turning into a bolt of lightning. Thanks to Danding Little Master, Yemienri, and Morning Star Orangutan for their 500 starting coin rewards, and thanks to two book friends Look000 and Wuxin for their rewards. Thanks. Mobile phone users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 1000. In the outer space of the solar system, several single-man battleships passed through a hole of white light and suddenly appeared in this galaxy as if they were jumping. This is the solar system. Haha, it's just a small place. That guy actually stumbled here. It's so ridiculous. Don't underestimate this Earth civilization. They themselves are nothing, but the strong man behind them is definitely not simple. I have asked people from the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire before, and they both said that the other person is not weak in strength. To our venerable being, even more so in some aspects. Of course I won't be careless. If the other party doesn't have the strength, that guy won't ask for help from us. No matter how powerful he is there any possibility of struggling in front of our great lords? It's not like we are great, the chief lord of the empire. Conversations continued among several battleships. The place where they jumped was not far from a blue planet. This blue star has an atmosphere, and there are spaceships and warships flying at the same time, showing a vibrant scene of primary civilization. And this distance is less than 1,000,000 kilometers. As long as these warships start moving, they don't need to go too fast and they can arrive within half an hour. You must know that the opponent's jump came from several light years away. Being able to reach here in one jump can be said to be extremely accurate. And being able to use the gravitational wave system to reach the destination so accurately within a few light years is considered a very terrifying technological capability. Will there be any powerful people in this backward civilization? It's quite novel. Each of the powerful envoys of the Venerables has a very low view of the Earth. You must know that in their view, this kind of civilization is basically no more than the indigenous people. But what they didn't know was that on the blue star, the being they wanted to meet had already noticed their arrival and charged straight towards them. But before that, these messengers who came from far away first saw the messenger flying 10,000 kilometers away from the Earth. Zhao Pian, look at you like a lost dog. No wonder you can't win even a small civilization on Earth. It's simply an embarrassment to our great empire. An envoy from the great empire who saw it laughed happily through the power of brain waves. Who says otherwise? This small Earth is not even a primary civilization. We can destroy their fleet with one shot, and those creatures, although they look very similar to us, are so weak that it is almost the same as the weakest pet in our empire. This kind of civilization can make you sink into the sand, which shows that your ability is not comparable to ours. From each of the battleships, a man who looked like an earthling came out. However, one of these men had colorful skin, and it was obvious that he was not from Earth. The other few are similar to the people on Earth. Even if they were among the people on Earth, no one would say that they are aliens. There are 4 of these major types of human beings, plus Zaopian who flew from the Earth. There are a total of 5 envoys from the great empire gathered here. Don't laugh at me. If you see Jia Yan, you won't be able to laugh. The monster didn't remind you in advance that Jia Yan is not someone to be trifled with. There was a look of anger on Zhao Pian's handsome face. You must know that his failure on Earth is destined to be recorded as a record of the great empire's mission, and his future will be affected by this in the future. Haha, aren't you making me laugh? If Jia Yan is powerful, you won't be able to survive. And we are so close. If he is really powerful, he will be aware of his arrival. Why haven't we seen him yet? What about him? Yes, if there really is a top-notch person among the natives of this Earth, I really want to meet him. The 2 imperial envoys almost wanted to laugh out loud when they heard Nazaopian's words. But just as they finished speaking, a sound that made their expressions change drastically appeared directly near a group of envoys. Haha, since you guys want to see me, Jia Yan, then it will be as you wish. This voice was soft and soft, with a feeling like a spring breeze, but it sounded in the place where these ambassadors gathered, but no one was seen, which immediately made all the ambassadors a little creepy. Who, after hearing the voice, a messenger was startled and looked to his side. But nothing was found. Jia Yan, as for Zhao Pian, who was meeting with several ambassadors, his expression changed drastically. The owner of this voice made him lose face half a month ago. How could he forget it? He looked to the left and right with a gloomy expression, but like those envoys, he could not see where the person who made the sound was. Jia Yan, come out. Zhao Pian's head suddenly felt uneasy. It was this unfathomable feeling again. Even though he understood that Jia Yan was just a venerable person, the memory of him vomiting blood when he was pressed by the other party's momentum half a month ago made him feel deep in his heart about Jia Yan. Having had the impression of terror, now experiencing it again, I almost trembled. Do you want me to show up? As you wish. As this reply sounded, a space became distorted near the sides of the great sages. This sight that they had never seen before made several ambassadors widen their eyes and quickly move away from the surroundings. In the Orion arm, there is no external training classification at all, and even space talents are rare, so now when they see a character who can appear from the subspace, they are like clowns who have never seen the world, and they are all dumbfounded. After they watched for a while, a man stepped out of the twisted space. This man was not tall, only about 1.75 meters tall, and his face was not handsome, but he had a kind of temperament that made him unforgettable at first sight. This is a kind of temperament that comes out naturally after hundreds of battles, especially when compared with the ambassadors in front of you. Although the handsomeness is inferior, the king's demeanor is far beyond that, so that the ambassadors almost dare not speak directly. See. You, are you Jia Yan? Several imperial envoys saw Jia Yan handsomely stepping out of the subspace one by one, and then saw his magnanimity, especially between his eyes. When they glanced at their great lords, they could not hide their contempt. At this time, they actually, instead of being angry, he was shocked. You must know that the strong are the strong, especially now that Jia Yan does not pursue a low profile and displays his aura slightly transmitted from his body. At a glance, they will not understand that the existence in front of them is extremely difficult to deal with. You guys are so polite. I am Jia Yan. Jia Yan's magnanimity remained the same, and he showed slight courtesy to the great sages. Zhao Pian, is this the Jia Yan you told us? He does seem to have some strength, and don't you know exactly what the invisibility method he used just now is? One of the sages narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Jia Yan. At the same time, when he saw Jia Yan, he immediately trembled and asked Zhao Pian using the power of his brainwaves. I really don't know that he actually has this kind of invisibility ability, but this ability must have weaknesses. Although we couldn't detect him just now, under siege, this ability will never be displayed, otherwise it would be too unnatural. Yes, Zhao Pian responded to the other party bravely. If he wants to rely on this group of colleagues to destroy Jia Yan, he can't show too much fear, otherwise his colleagues will know that nothing can be done and they will definitely surrender and run away. That's right. After all, we are all venerables. His brainwave power fluctuations are a little weaker than ours. This kind of combat skill must have limitations. When the other party heard what Zhao Pian said, he nodded in relief. On the other side, Jia Yan looked at each other for a long time with several great sages. Seeing that the 5 great sages on the other side were still talking on the phone and ignoring him, Jia Yan paused and asked with a stern expression. They should all be envoys from all sides of that great empire. I wonder what the purpose of gathering outside the main planet of our Earth civilization is today. This sentence brought several ambassadors back to reality from their discussions. Jia Yan, why are we here? You resisted the order of our great empire's envoy and even hurt the envoy. This is a serious crime. I don't know how you are going to atone for your sin. An envoy who seemed to be the most powerful among the 5 envoys came to Shi Yuan and stood up gently. With a gleam in his eyes, he asked Jia Yan. Jia Yan smiled slightly, but a hint of anger rose in his heart. Haha, when your great empire's envoy came to our Earth civilization has given enough face. Not only did it rush to build the embassy, but it also held a large welcome banquet. However, your great empire went even further and brought back Asta and Ruland's civilization to aid them. Not to mention the people who built my civilization, you still want my Earth to become the military material slave of your great empire. I, Jia Yan, am not talented, and although my strength is nothing, I will definitely resist what your great empire does. Jia Yan's words, word for word, can be said to be spoken from the bottom of his heart. But when the other ambassadors heard this, they all laughed. Jia Yan, what you said is too naive. I think you are not a strong man who has never been in the universe. Why are you so naive? In the universe, the survival of the fittest is the key. Today, you on Earth cannot even compare with an indigenous civilization. I am older. The Empire is the leader of an interstellar empire hundreds of light years away. It is already a great favor for not erasing your Earth with one hand. You actually reason with me? Believe it or not, we are going to carry out our mission now and kill you for daring to do so. Those who resist will be wiped out from this universe along with the race on Earth behind you. Several envoys were extremely angry. They had been running rampant in this starry sky for a long time. There was not even a strong person in this starry sky. Several well-known empires were easily conquered by their great lords. Now in this small elementary civilization, a strong man comes out to speak reason, and still wants to resist them? It doesn't matter if this small civilization is destroyed, its productivity is average anyway. Unexpectedly, the messenger had just appeared with a sinister dagger, and Jia Yan, who was opposite the great sages, was already smiling. This smile is not an ordinary smile, but an extremely angry smile. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 1001. Okay, very good. I originally thought that your great empire might be a good civilization if it wanted to resist foreign enemies, but now I see that several ambassadors are like this. In this case, the great empire is probably only at this level. This really disappoints me, Jia Yan. You want to destroy me, please destroy me now. If I let you hurt every plant and tree on my Earth, I, Jia Yan, will kill myself here today. Jia Yan's eyes flashed with horror, and at the same time, a ferocious aura like a wild animal emerged, almost shocking the envoys on the opposite side. But the pride of the envoys of the great empire prevented them from being easily intimidated by Jia Yan. This Jia Yan is actually so rebellious, and he really doesn't mean a single word. Humph, this Jia Yan is going too far in arranging my empire. Several great imperial lords were in a state of excitement at the moment. Almost all of them seemed to have been slapped by Jia Yan, and they charged towards Jia Yan with great anger. They were angry. You must know that the great empire has always been the most powerful empire in the Orion Arm. Although it was hampered by transportation problems and could not unify the entire Orion Arm, its authority within the Orion Arm could not be underestimated by others. Jia Yan said they had nothing, but they could not bear it if his words insulted the great empire. At this moment, the 5 envoys launched an attack on Jia Yan. Jia Yan stared slightly. You must know that the strength of his current avatar has been reduced a lot, and it is probably on the edge of a venerable one. It is about to fall from the status of a venerable one. Facing several envoys from the great empire, if you are not careful, you may get hurt. Knowing that this clone would have something to do next, he didn't want to be hurt like this. The first person to attack was a mid-level venerable in Orion's arm. Of course, considering his mid-level status, it was estimated that even the low-level venerables from the Northern Star region could easily defeat him. Jia Yan saw that Qi was using a kind of battle armor, which should have good protective capabilities. He immediately stepped back. His experience showed when the opponent's knife-like weapon passed by his body. Before Jia Yan could counterattack, an envoy from behind also hit him with a pair of giant hammers. Their weapons are very Orion style. In fact, Jia Yan has not seen many creatures using weapons since he arrived in the outside universe, because strong men who borrow external forces not only do not improve their combat effectiveness much, but also do not improve their own strength. Not much good. But now he suddenly encountered a group of people using weapons, and Jia Yan was really not used to it. As expected, he is a typical Orion arm strongman, that's about it. The current strength of Jia Yan's clone is not very strong, but he has been able to dodge several times, but it seems very easy. After all, his actual strength is much higher than that of the clone. He stands tall and has a high vision. Now he sees this group of people attacking him. The messenger is like seeing a group of slow-moving clowns. Of course, Jia Yan himself was also physically slow, and he even felt bored that his body couldn't keep up with his thinking. After dodging the blow, Jia Yan punched out with his fist. This was his first counterattack. A strong man at the back who fired his spear-type weapon saw Jia Yan's counterattack and his expression changed. However, he did not feel that Jia Yan was attacking him. He should be counterattacking the colleague who had passed by him before. Right. This was a misjudgment on his part. Jia Yan's counterattack was actually directed at the spear user. Puff. With one punch, the envoy could not see clearly Jia Yan's fist. It turned out that Jia Yan secretly used some space talent, which made his fist move several times faster. He missed the tip of the opponent's gun almost instantly, and then followed the gun body and hit his chest. How come? Nazao Pian, who was about to attack Jia Yan from the rear, was horrified when he saw Jia Yan counterattack with a single blow, causing the strong man in front of him to spurt blood and almost lose his fighting ability. But before he could make any move, Jia Yan, who had just finished bombarding his colleague, turned his eyes and looked at him. You, the instigator, will not be spared. Just die. Jia Yan took a step towards him. The speed seemed slow, but in fact, it was extremely fast. You. Zhao Pian discovered with some horror that he could not escape at all. The surrounding space seemed to be controlled by some kind of power. Although the power was not big, in this strong battlefield, a little bit of control was enough to change the outcome of the battle. Jia Yan used the venerable level environmental control power of the outer starry sky. In this Orion arm, the use of brainwave power was horribly low. Now that Jia Yan uses this tactic, several venerables have been affected. Arriving in front of the messenger Zhao Pian sent by the Great Empire to the Earth, Jia Yan showed a smile. Pian had seen this smile before. During the negotiation half a month ago, Jia Yan used this smile to scare the shit out of him. And now this smile appears again. This time's performance was different from last time, it was a smile that killed him. Your Excellency Jia Yan, I was wrong, please. At this moment, Zhao Pian didn't dare to talk to Jia Yan about anything else, and he didn't even have the slightest idea of revenge. He immediately opened his mouth to apologize and beg for mercy. But is an apology useful? Jia Yan's clone was seen clenching his fists. A punch blasted out. Puff. This blow used 50% to 60% of the clone's power. Jia Yan felt that the energy stored in his body was reduced a lot in an instant. But the effect is outstanding. I saw Zhao Pian in front of the fist. His handsome face could not escape at all. Under this blow, he was hit in the head. The explosive force hit the opponent's forehead, and then, visible to the naked eye, the whole head blossomed. Brain plasma, blood, eyeballs, etc., all splattered everywhere. A majestic envoy of the great empire, a powerful man who had previously asked for anything from the civilization of the earth, and even made many excessive demands, was actually beaten to death by Jia Yan with just one punch. Zhao Pian is actually dead. Jia Yan, you have committed a serious crime, and you dare to kill the envoy of my great empire. This is simply a national hatred. Our great empire will definitely fight to the death with your Earth civilization. An envoy who had just besieged Jia Yan was almost furious when he saw this scene. You must know that every envoy of the great empire is a valuable fighting force in the great empire, and you must know that His Holiness is also one of the top beings for the great empire. Now Jia Yan actually dares to kill one, which is not much different from a national feud. But just when he wanted to shout something more, he was stopped by the middle-level venerable being on the side. Your Excellency Jia Yan, don't take what he just said to heart. He stopped several envoys who were about to return to besiege Jia Yan. Then he raised his head, his slightly dark eyes had an inexplicable color. The battle we fought with you just now was just a small holiday. Now that the culprit Zhao Pian is dead, how about the grudge between you and our great empire is settled like this? Big boss, why do you bow to him? The other three ambassadors all looked at this middle-level venerable being with a look of disbelief. However, the former ignored the envoys at all and continued to look at Jia Yan. Master Jia Yan, this is how Pian provoked the relationship between your Earth civilization and our empire, and now he has been killed by you. It can be considered as a crime well deserved, and we will not pursue it. Also, as you said before, if you want the technical personnel from the Asta Empire and the Rulan Empire to return, we will agree to it. Even if you want our empire to send technical and teaching personnel, I will also make the decision and agree to it. How about that? When the so-called big leader said a series of words, the three envoys around him all looked at this middle-level powerful venerable with disbelief. They all almost thought that the other party was no longer the middle-level venerable they knew. You must know that this middle-level powerful venerable is the highest emissary of the Starry Sky Empire in their area. He is extremely enthusiastic about this action, because he originally wanted to kill chickens and monkeys in this starry sky and give a warning to those who dare to resist civilization. Example. But now he actually gives in? Could it be that he discovered something unusual about Jia Yan? Several great sages looked at Jia Yan in surprise. Although Jia Yan had killed Nazapian with one blow before, they had not yet reached the advanced level of venerables, and they were not even aware of the sage used by Jia Yan before. Or environmental control power. But the big leader was different. As a middle-level venerable with the Orion arm, he seemed to vaguely know the source of this power, so at this time, the look on his face when he looked at Jia Yan changed somewhat. Haha, my Earth civilization is naturally not an unreasonable person. If you recognize who is right and who is wrong, I will not hold you accountable. Jia Yan smiled even more when he heard the other party's words. Although he is not afraid of fighting, the power of his clones will only be reduced if he uses it. After fighting these great sages, he will not have much energy left in his clones. Before Jia Yan can think of a way to replenish it, it would be nice not to fight. But Jia Yan is definitely not just someone who is bullied but doesn't know how to fight back. However, no matter what the misunderstanding is, it is an indisputable fact that several envoys from your great empire came to my Earth to besiege me today. Now I have other demands for compensation, and I would like to ask the envoys to be accommodating. Jia Yan continued calmly. You still dare to demand compensation from us? This is too much. An envoy finally couldn't bear it any longer, raised his weapon, and was about to attack Jia Yan. But before that, the big leader took another step in front of the opponent. Don't be unreasonable. We did make a mistake first. Let's first hear what compensation Your Excellency Jia Yan wants. After saying this, he turned to Jia Yan and nodded. Please tell me, Your Excellency Jia Yan, what kind of compensation you want. Jia Yan looked at the earth behind him. Haha, some people on our Earth must be shocked by your arrival. This loss is not small. He was obviously crying when he said this. But the Earth below is still fine, and there are probably only a few satellites that have observed the battle. How can anyone be scared? Of course Jia Yan understands this, but this does not prevent him from continuing to cry about poverty. Let's see. I want the number of technical and teaching personnel mentioned before to be equal to that of the Asta Empire, as well as materials. I have seen the money conversion ratio of your great empire. For the time being, it is equivalent to your empire's 200 million imperial yuan. How about construction aid materials? Puff. Thanks to the book friend, I'm stuck in the starting point and can't get out for the 10,000 starting point coin reward, and thank you to the wealthy brothers. I would also like to thank the book friend Wei for the 2,000 starting coin reward. Thank you. I would also like to thank the book friend Sleeping Day for the 500 starting coin reward. I also want to thank the book friends Tushui Mulinson and Wuxen for their rewards. Thank you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 1002. Upward arrow www.35ww.om, the fastest updating novel website without pop-up windows. Puff. When Jia Yan said the number of 200 million, a tall ambassador who had been injured by Jia Yan's brainwave power when fighting with him before spat out a mouthful of old blood. 200 million. Why don't you go and grab it? He pointed at Wang Jian tremblingly and said in disbelief. You must know that the number mentioned by Wang Jian is also a huge number in the Great Empire. Even if they are a group of extremely high-status people, their family assets may not be 200 million. For a small civilization, the 200 million of a large empire is definitely a wealth that can turn over. What? Your empire is so big and you don't even want to pay 200 million when you make a mistake? There is no way. It seems that there is really no possibility of peace between our Earth civilization and the Great Empire. Jia Yan shook his head lightly. Seems extremely regretful. No, we will pay. Mr. Jia Yan, several ambassadors from our Great Empire were bewitched by Zhao Pian this time and came to Earth to have trouble with you. Please do not take it personally, Mr. Jia Yan. The compensation will be delivered in the near future. We will take our leave now. The big leader's envoy finished speaking a few words to Jia Yan, then winked at the surrounding envoys, and the envoys quickly flew away. Jia Yan was left alone in the starry sky, watching them enter the battleship from a distance, and then fly into the vast universe, looking a little thoughtful. Jia Yan couldn't understand why the big leader suddenly changed his attitude. Among the envoys on the way, except for the big leader himself, the others were also confused. Big leader, what's going on with you? You actually expressed your attitude towards Jia Yan like this before. Are you worried that none of us can kill him, so you are using a delaying tactic to go back and ask for help? A messenger uses brain communication to communicate with the big leader. Wrong, what I said before is true. I want to apply to the Empire for compensation for Earth civilization, and the number Jia Yan said is not much. I am not prepared to negotiate with him to reduce the compensation. The big leader said something solemn. A sound. What? Are you crazy? Our great empire has never apologized to other civilizations in the past 1,000 years, let alone compensation for losing power and humiliating the country. If you submit this proposal, the empire will definitely think that you have lost your mind and gone crazy. The leaders of the great empire looked at the starry sky from their battleships with bright eyes. It seemed that above the slowly departing blue planet, a figure with dark eyes was still looking at them. The big leader's whole body trembled slightly. You don't understand. I just felt something was wrong with Jia Yan's body. If I guessed correctly. Thinking of that possibility, the big leader felt slightly cold and was so frightened that he was sweating. Every strong person has his own talent. Although the expression of talent is not so strong in the land of Orion's arm, the talent of strong people seems to be more diverse than the strong people in the outside world. And the talent of this big leader is just the ability to see some physical quantum. When he was fighting Jia Yan just now, he clearly felt that the opponent's body was not actually moving, but was controlled by some symmetrical quantum. And through the quantum feeling, he could detect the existence of the person controlling Jia Yan's body. Almost a creature that he could not even imagine. This shock made him want to run away on the spot. Fortunately, Jia Yan's attitude just now did not show murderous intent, so the big leader had to bite the bullet and have the previous remarks with Jia Yan. No matter whether the two adults of the empire can compare with the real body behind Jia Yan, it is right for us not to antagonize him. Even if we pay a small price, it is a good deal, not to mention that his real body maybe he will come back to help my Orion arm fight during the war. Even if he doesn't help, it seems that his clone is not a simple existence. The more he thought about it, the clearer his ideas became. If you only spend 200 million empire coins to make friends with someone who can even compare to the two seniors in God's country, it is simply trivial. Even if you send some people to the earth to help with the construction, there will be no loss. Jia Yan, who was outside the earth's atmosphere, had been watching the warships of several ambassadors leave. The big leader looked a little strange. He even agreed to my request for compensation. I originally wanted to bargain with them. But it doesn't matter. They are willing to pay the price. I can just let this small feud be settled. Jia Yan thought for a while and couldn't guess the reason why the big leader's attitude towards him changed completely. In the end, I had to attribute it to the other party seeing clearly the strength of his clone. Jia Yan also did not expect that the other party did not see clearly the strength of the clone, but saw the existence of the real body behind Jia Yan through his talent. Seeing that the opponent had no intention of returning to attack, Jia Yan shook his head. This battle came and went quickly. The matter was over, and he could rest assured about his true identity. The clone's side should be fine for the time being. I just need to put some energy into it. With steps, Jia Yan gently returned to the earth from the starry sky. When he returned, a warship was already facing Jia Yan, flying up from the ground, and then came to Jia Yan's side. He did not dare to say anything, but just accompanied him. Obviously, the Earth side also passed the satellite and saw the previous battle from a distance. Now they are extremely happy for Jia Yan, and even several senior officials at the satellite live broadcast site cried with joy. Master Jia Yan protected the Earth again. Reputation has long been meaningless to him, and even if he celebrates wildly, he is afraid of disturbing this gentleman, so they did not welcome him with great fanfare, but sent a battleship up to accompany him in the flight. Jia Yan looked at the small battleship. In the 100-meter-high battleship, more than 100 soldiers came to the bridge and lined up to salute the flying Jia Yan. Although it is not a big battle, it still makes people feel a little warm in their hearts. Jia Yan smiled. When they reached the sky above Return City, the people on the warship lined up in a row and saluted. All ran back to their respective posts, and then the warship slowly flew away from Return City. Jia Yan nodded to them and flew down towards the Jia family's land. "Brother, you are back." When they came here, it seemed that everyone in the Jia family knew that Jia Yan had been fighting before. Jia's parents, Jia Lin and her children, and even Satsamakan and his son Jia Rong all came out to welcome them. Jia Yan looked at them and smiled slightly. "They're all here. It's just a bunch of clowns. Don't worry. This is Jia Yan. You must know that among this group of venerables, in this Orion arm, apart from the great empire itself, there is probably no empire that can compete. Okay, it's fine as long as Xiao Yan is back. I just made a pot of chicken soup that Xiao Yan loved to eat when he was a child, and we went to his grandparents' house to eat it." Jia Mu was open-minded. After all, as a person who doesn't understand cultivation, no matter what level of power he is, she didn't even see it clearly, but she just knew that her son seemed to be really powerful. Aliens that others thought were extremely powerful were just like chickens and dogs in his eyes. Well, it's been a long time since I had my mother's chicken soup. I miss it a little. Come on, let's go eat it. Jia Yan's eyes lit up, thinking of the delicious food when he was a child, his mouth watered uncontrollably. Life on an alien planet is too hard, so being able to get this little bit of happiness is really what Jia Yan dreams of. The Jia family can now be described as a happy family. It's a pity that Jia Yan's real body on Earth is not his real body. Feeling the delicious food that his clone enjoyed when he was young, his real body's mouth is full of sour taste while flying. Well, after the control clone finished eating, and then went to his room to retreat in order to save energy, the real body let out a long sigh. After all, the clone's real body is different, and even the taste is not quite real. The happier Jia Yan's clone is now, the more it highlights that he is actually very lonely at all. Forget it, don't think about it so much. The big mosquito smiled bitterly and shook his head. The clone is in seclusion in the house, while guarding against possible counterattacks from the great empire. But doing those things only requires a part of the mind, and Jia Yan put most of his mental power on his real body. He has been in the Lakiao force for a few days. Now I need to calm down and search carefully among the Lakiao forces to see if there is a workshop suitable for repairing my concept ship. This guest, please. Are you talking about something from a science fiction movie? Don't kid me. How can such a battleship exist? Another sarcastic word sounded in Jia Yan's ears. Don't be surprised, there are also science fiction movies in space. As the name suggests, they are science fictions. Even though the current science and technology ingenious battlefield has reached the level seen in sci-fi movies on Earth, there are still things that cannot be achieved with this kind of technological strength, so there is still a market for sci-fi movies. Jia Yan asked several workshops, but before he could finish explaining the functions of the concept ship, people all stared at him, saying that what he was thinking of was a product from a science fiction movie. This guest, you said you want us to make this kind of thing? How is it possible? If you want to play with our geek workshop, you are admitting the wrong person. Our workshop is not someone you can offend. Power, do you understand? When Jia Yan was once again kicked out of a certain workshop with bad intentions, he smiled bitterly. In this Lakiao force, the powerful workshops or industrial products he saw all had terrible technological strength. There were even warships built by some workshops. His heart skipped a beat when he saw that, because of that the battleships were already able to threaten him. But when he explained the specifications of the concept ship and tested the workshops and industrial products for the reason of wanting to build a battleship, he was regarded as a madman. But you can't ask. Since this concept ship was developed by people from the Li Jiao faction, there must be someone who can repair it. In hundreds of years, the original author might still be in the Li Jiao faction. Indefinite. Jia Yan did not give up. He had just left a workshop and was about to fly to the next place. Master Jia Yan, hey, are you Master Jia Yan? Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 1003. A somewhat surprising voice sounded in Jia Yan's ears. Jia Yan looked back and saw a skinny sub-level monster standing outside the workshop gate, where monsters came and went, looking at Jia Yan strangely. Jia Yan was startled, and then he saw a small radar-like device on his foot, and he suddenly smiled with relief. Her appearance is familiar to Jia Yan, and it is none other than Ziba, a female sub-level monster from the Lakiao force who traveled with Jia Yan before. At this time, Ziba was holding the radar on her feet. The radar seemed to have a great reaction to Jia Yan and kept making whistling sounds. However, she looked at the radar and then at the metal crow in front of her, feeling a little afraid. Recognize each other. Her radar is the Master Jia Yan detector. It turns out that after Zibala separated from Jia Yan and others that day, she escaped back to the Lakiao force alone. You must know that the Dark Territory North Regiment is also a great threat to the Lakiao force where she belongs. After all, the Lakiao force only has strong technological capabilities and combat effectiveness. On the contrary, it is not extremely strong. Therefore, Zibala no longer dared to go out to provoke the forces of the Baituan. He just looked at his Lord Jia Yan detector every day, imagining that Jia Yan would come to find him and report that he was safe. Unexpectedly, she and her elders went out for shopping today and accidentally used the detector, and actually sensed Jia Yan's fluctuations. "Who are you anyway?" Zibala made a sound of doubt. After Jia Yan's previous experience of cross-dressing, she didn't have much doubt about the detector this time. It was just that the body of Jia Yan's metal concept chip was actually emitting the next level of strength, which made her a little suspicious. After all, in her opinion, Jia Yan would not be promoted so quickly. "Ziba, I am Jia Yan, right?" Jia Yan didn't want to admit his identity. After all, it was difficult to explain the concept chip. But suddenly, he thought that Zibala seemed to have good technological capabilities, and her identity had always been a bit mysterious. She might be helpful to him in repairing the concept chip. Even as a reminder. So he admitted his identity directly. "You are indeed Mr. Jia Yan. The previous pursuit by the Northern Regiment did not harm you, right?" Zibala's skinny monster's face flashed with joy, and then he couldn't hide his joy and said hello. "This is not the place to talk. Are you free now? Let's find a place to talk." Jia Yan looked around and then said to 11 Bala. "Okay, you must have come back to tell me that you are safe. I know that Mr. Jia Yan is nostalgic the most." Zibala seemed to have misunderstood something, but Jia Yan would not point it out. Zibala looked very familiar with this workshop place and took Jia Yan to a rest shop opened for strong monsters. The waiter brought huge amounts of fruits, etc., as well as drinks. Zibala was very accustomed to opening a fruit that was dozens of meters tall and started eating it. Jia Yan, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. This was the first time he had entered a similar rest shop in the starry sky for so long. "Master Jia Yan, don't you want to eat it? It's very delicious, and it also has some energy. This kind of fruit is very popular in this store. If I didn't have the privilege, I wouldn't necessarily have it everywhere." Zibala wondered why Jia Yan didn't eat it. Jia Yan shook his head helplessly, then controlled his metal concept chip, stuck out his crow's mouth, and drank some fruit juice. The juice soon followed the passage of the concept chip to his mouth, and was sucked by Jia Yan. "That's good." Jia Yan's eyes lit up. As expected, it is a fruit that Zibala likes, and it is a good thing for the Starry Sky Warriors. Not only does it taste delicious, but it also has a sense of magical power. Of course, it does not enhance Jia Yan much, but it also adds a touch of strangeness to the taste. It can be said to be delicious. "Hey, I heard the sound of machinery." Just when Jia Yan opened his mouth, Naxi Bala suddenly raised his head, and then looked in the direction of Jia Yan, a little surprised. As an excellent scientific monster, she can detect even the slightest mechanical sound. She didn't realize that the concept chip Jia Yan was wearing was already a powerful concept chip, but now Jia Yan opened his mouth and opened the passage to the inside. The voice was immediately heard by her. Zibala looked shocked. In fact, she was extremely confident in her own technological abilities, but now she actually saw a battle armor that she probably didn't even understand the principles of. How could she not be shocked? But she was also relieved at the same time. It turned out that Jia Yan's appearance was not changed after he was promoted to strength, but the reason why he wore this mechanical armor. You must know that as a fan, she really likes the coolness of the original Big Mosquito. Cool Mosquito look. Jia Yan shook his head in embarrassment when he saw that his true identity was exposed. but this can just explain his current situation. I think this Ziba will not betray himself. Even if he is betrayed, as long as the person who comes is not a highly talented semi-star level being, Jia Yan is now confident of escaping. Click click click. When Zibala called out the true form of Jia Yan's concept ship, the metal crow in front of her slowly melted. Then the big mosquito body was revealed from behind the body of the concept ship. Haha, Lord Jia Yan, this is you. Seeing that her idol's appearance had not changed, Zibala immediately smiled. Okay, Ziba, I have something to ask you. Anyway, the concept ship has been exposed, and Jia Yan no longer hides it, but opens the skylight and speaks openly. Not long after, Zibala listened to Jia Yan's description, and her eyes were a little shocked. You must know that Jia Yan has concealed some of his battles in the Dark Realm, and only talked about the power of Xing Lang, but whether it was a battle with a half-star strong man from the North Group, or seeing a terrifying giant dragon, these things are all things Zibala can't imagine. Jia Yan's statement is that he hid for a while after the battle between Xing Lang's forces, and the concept ship was also said to have broken down during the battle between Xing Lang's forces. In this case, the matter of the Dark Realm will be hidden. Huh. After listening to Jia Yan's description, Zibala let out a long breath. Anyway, you want to ask me if I can repair this concept ship, right? Zibala summarized the meaning of Jia Yan's words. Yes, and what I said before, I hope Miss Zibala will not reveal it. Jia Yan nodded. Giggle, this is another little secret between us. There are more and more little secrets between me and Mr. Jia Yan. If it can be spread out, I will definitely envy the people in the fan club. Zibala smiled. He nodded and seemed extremely happy. The more Jia Yan looked at this guy, he always felt that his mouth was unreliable. Okay, let me take a look at what kind of concept ship Master Jia Yan is. But it needs to be in a different place. Zibala let Jia Yan out of the private room in the rest area. Of course, Jia Yan still wore the concept ship and left as a crow metal strongman. Through Zibala's explanation, Jia Yan suddenly understood that it turned out that Zibala was the only daughter of the leader of the Lakiao force. She was even born in the genius battlefield. She didn't even know what the outer starfield looked like. Have no idea. I haven't experienced any storms since I was a child, so it's no wonder that I still look very innocent. Jia Yan also asked, most of the fans she mentioned are like her, they belong to the localized genius battlefield Tian Erde, they grew up with the key to genius, and they all chase stars and strong people. Of course, Jia Yan wouldn't say anything about other people's lives. Without these fans, he also lost the opportunity to repair the concept ship. Now he has to thank this unique customs. We're here, Master Jia Yan, wait, let me see if there is anyone inside. Zibala carefully led Jia Yan to a large factory on Gongfang Star. Then he looked inside and saw that there was no sign of any living thing, so he led Jia Yan inside. The factory is indeed a place full of machinery. Of course, Jia Yan doesn't understand the functions of any of these machines. Okay, now Mr. Jia Yan will take off the concept ship and let me analyze it. Zibala came to a machine and said to Jia Yan. Jia Yan looked deeply at the other party, then looked at the surrounding environment. After finding no ambush, he took off the concept ship. The constantly squirming memory metal turned into a ball of metal dough, then stretched out and spread flat on the ground. After unfolding it in this way, it can be seen that the concept ship is missing a lot, and some key parts are damaged. Just when Jia Yan felt a little distressed, he saw Zibala looking at a corner of the concept ship and letting out a soft sigh of surprise. This concept ship. Zibala looked at the unfolded concept ship, and Jia Yan saw that the area he was looking at was a small corner below the concept ship after it was laid flat. There is a certain pattern painted there, like a small mark. If Zibala hadn't noticed it, Jia Yan wouldn't have noticed this small mark after wearing it for so long. Your Excellency Jiayan, we are really destined. This concept ship of yours may be a relic of my grandfather. Zibala wiped the corners of the monster's big eyes and looked at Jiayuan as if there were really 2 drops of tears. Your grandfather's relic, Jiayan was startled, then nodded curiously. He was just surprised that the concept ship he was wearing was actually a relic of Grandpa Zibala. If this female creature really had this relationship, wouldn't the chance of repairing the concept ship be greater? But Zibala poured a basin of cold water on him. Master Jiayan, my grandfather was the one who revitalized the Lakiao force back then. Even my parents' current scientific power cannot be compared to 1% of my grandfather. Back then, he was personally invited by the Genius Battlefield official to join from the official scientific research department of Genius Battlefield. Let's put it this way, your concept ship is really a relic of my grandfather, and the logo on it represents what he considered to be the best work in his life. It turns out that the world has always guessed why his best work disappeared. It turns out that it is this concept ship. I'm sorry, I don't think I can repair this concept ship. Not to mention me, even the entire Lakiao force, and even the current Genius Battlefield, there may be no one who can repair this warship. After all, my grandfather's skills are not at all people can understand.